Okay, another video. The title of this one is Life is Mysterious in Its Nature. Nobody knows anything, and no one ever will. All conclusions are either beliefs or speculations. Well, the title pretty much said it all. Literally, see, I remember because I done psychology in college and university. Um, Essentially, see, I was just thinking back to some of the studies we was learning about conformity and why everyone is just sheep, essentially. Like, why are humans sheep? And there's loads of different studies, like the Ash study, the Milgram study, all of these kinds of things. Like, there's studies where it might sound absurd, but for example, they'll have people in a room, right? And they'll test one person at a time. So they'll send in the person that they're actually testing, but let's say there'll be 10 people in the room, but they're only testing one of them, and the other nine are actors, right? And they'll have like a whiteboard at the front, and they'll literally have three lines with different lengths, and all they have to do is point at, or like they'll have one line, one line, one line. One will be A, one will be B, one will be C, and they all have different lengths, and all they have to do is say which one's the longest, right? And they'll probably do, I think they did multiple rounds of this, and they told all the actors to essentially say the wrong one on purpose, and they're just testing that one person. And it's obvious, like they can literally see the whiteboard, they can see all three of them, they can clearly see which one's the longest, but because obviously not all of them, but literally the majority, I can't remember the exact statistics, but probably more than 60, 70, maybe 80% of the person that they were actually testing, they always ended up saying what the rest of them said, because they even made them like say it one by one. They'll be like, oh, which one is it, A, B, or C? Then like he'll say it, but he's in on the experiment, he's an actor. Then they'll ask another actor, then they'll ask another actor, then they'll ask another actor, and then he's looking at the board, he's seeing that it's C is the longest, but they're all saying B, and then he'll literally conform and then say it's B. Of course, there'll be like the minority, like maybe 10%. They don't fold, right? But you don't need 100% to fold. You only need more than 50%, and this is how the elites control the masses anyway, and get the masses to believe in ridiculous things. And it's actually way easier to control people in masses than individuals, because when you're like, and this is why solitude and silence is two of the key things to actually becoming more conscious. Like, if you look at many of the philosophers in the past, like the wisest people, not just philosophers, scientists, like they're all usually people who are lone wolves, so to speak. People who are just always by themselves, didn't have a family, because there's these phenomena called groupthink and so on, essentially, to where you'll conform to certain ideals, which could be like retarded ideals, completely just stupid ideals that if you were by yourself you would be able to see through, but because you're like surrounded by everyone else, and if they're all bought into the delusion, you're gonna even like you're gonna be more inclined to go with the delusion, because you want to fit in. And obviously, there's many different reasons for that. One of my old theories, which I think it still makes sense, is that, of course, like many generations ago, like a long time ago, we obviously like started in tribes, and back in the day when obviously we didn't have all this technology, it was way more physical brute force, so you couldn't really survive as like a lone wolf, like just like there wasn't just individuals just going off living by themselves. Like, you can do that nowadays because there's the infrastructure for that, but in the past, like if you left your tribe, you would die. You would literally die. So it's so like encoded in our genetics that you have to stick in the tribe, otherwise you're gonna die. And even though that's not true nowadays, that kind of programming is still in us to where you never want to leave the group, even if the group is walking off the cliff. You'll walk off the cliff with them. Of course, now there's slowly more people, like individuals, going against the grain. Of course, there's always been people going against the grain, but people are starting to become more aware and go against the grain. But how did I get to that point? Oh yeah. See, so, and the reason why I even was speaking about that conformity and so on is because in that, for example, in that experiment, and there was another experiment. There was loads of different ones. The Milgram experiment, where they'll put someone in a room, and then they'll have another person, like, who's an actor, but he's supposed to be the one, like, running the experiment. They made them wear like an official lab coat, all of these kind of things. Then they have like someone else in the room, like in a room, like in a room next to them, but they can't see it, right? And that other person is connected to like an electric shock machine, right? And then there's like multiple volts. It goes from like 10 volts, 20 volts, 30 volts, all the way up to like 380 volts or some shit, right? And I think past like 240 or like 300 is starting to already get to fatal, right? And they basically done it so there was options even beyond that, right? And literally the experiment was simple. Like the guy who, like, in the lab coat will just tell him, like, click 10 volts. And then the guy that they're testing, like, he'll click 10 volts, right? He probably wouldn't hear anything. But then as he goes up in the voltage, then obviously he can't see the person in the other room, because there actually isn't even someone in the other room connected to the electrodes. But the person being tested doesn't know that. And then they'll play like tape of someone like starting to scream or like be like in pain, right? And then as the volts go up, like the pain starts going, like the person starts screaming more and more, and until the like later stages, there's not even a response anymore. So like to that person who's doing it, and especially when they're seeing that past 240 volts or whatever is fatal, and they're not even hearing it. Like before, as they was going up, the screams was getting worse and worse, and now you've gone to a certain point, and you're not even hearing a response. To where so that they even think that they might have even killed the person or made them go unconscious or something. But obviously, and they naturally would try and resist and say, like, I don't want to do it. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, but then of course they would give the person in the lab coat, who was also an actor, they would just tell them to give them prompts. Just say, please continue the experiment, or you have to continue the experiment. Or they'll just kind of give them like a little prompt, just push them on. Like really, they could have just walked out of the room, but they just gave them certain word like lines, prompts, just to push them on. And you'd be surprised, like literally so many of the humans, they press the buttons. Like normal humans who you wouldn't think are psychopaths, they literally went and pressed like buttons, lethal voltage to someone, like a human in the room opposite to them, to where they're basically knowingly killing them. Why? Just because the guy in the lab coat said so. And it was of course showing like the like how strong authority is, right? Of course there's no like real strength of authority. Authority only has strength if you believe in it, because there's no such thing as authority. Like this, like you are the one with the authority. But if you outsource it to someone else, if you think the lab coat guy like really has authority over me, then whatever he says is going to have way more impact, and you're just going to follow along, right? But of course, essentially with all these experiments is kind of like the person is in an ambiguous situation, which essentially means like it's uncertain. And that's how it always is for life. Life is always uncertain, which is kind of the point of the video, is that life is mysterious in nature. Is that why people conform so much as well, is that when you're in a uncertain situation, it's strange. It's a strange mechanic. Like it's still unsure. Like why? But for some reason, when you're in an ambiguous situation and you don't know the answer for certain, there's this kind of phenomena where humans tend to believe that someone else knows. So in that example, they're thinking, oh, the lab coat guy must know. He wouldn't tell me to continue the experiment if it wasn't lethal or something, right? Like if he's telling me to carry on, then sure, I'll carry on because he doesn't know, but you for some reason think someone else knows. So this is the same condition for all of humanity where they're all uncertain. Like no one really knows what the fuck's going on, but they think that someone else knows, and then this is how the governments and authorities kind of take over because they for some reason start believing, the authority guys know, the scientists know, the science study says this or the science study says that, or the government guy said it, the president said that, so it must be that. You know what I'm saying? So this is how they control perception and can control masses, right? And make people do things that they would have never done alone because they was uncertain. And see, if life wasn't uncertain or wasn't ambiguous or wasn't mysterious in its nature, if it was clear, like if everyone knew what the truth was, then you wouldn't be able to manipulate them. But because no one knows, that's what gives you the leeway to do that, right? And really, if everyone knew, like, just because it's ambiguous, it doesn't even need to be that way, but it's because it's ambiguous, but it's deep in the collective conscious that they think that when I don't know, there must be someone, at least someone knows. The priest knows, or the guru knows. You know what I'm saying? You think someone knows. And it's not even just because that's what you think, it's also what you want to be true. That's another part of the way you perceive and the bias of reality is that a lot of times what you end up seeing, the way you perceive reality is affected by what you want it to be. So you could be in a dire situation where everything's going wrong, but you want it to be right. And then that's how people get scammed. That's how people get brought into cults and into religions and this and that, is because they're so desperate that even if it's unlikely that the thing is true, they want something to be true. So they're just gonna their mind, they're not gonna be aware of this in the moment, but unconsciously they're gonna be skewed to they want to believe the guy in the lab coat. They want to believe what the president said. Because if not, then it's all just chaos. But essentially my point as well is just that if the collective conscious knew that, yes, I don't know, but no one knows, then it wouldn't be like possible for all this manipulation either, right? It's the belief that I don't know, but somebody knows, and I need to follow them. That's where all kinds of corruption can happen. But yeah, and the reason why life is ambiguous and why no one knows and why no one will ever know is because the nature of life is incompleteness. It's always incomplete because it's within time, right? So it's always unfolding, and there's always a future moment that hasn't happened yet. And no matter like how large your perspective is, you always have a blind spot. The moment you have a perspective, even if your perspective is 99%, like you're gonna have 1% that you can't see. So it's all like you can never know something for certain. I made a video on that as well. Can we know anything for certain? And within the relative plane or just life, like in physical terms, like no, you can't be certain of anything at all because you will never have 100% of data. And this is why AI as well will I have a good video lined up as well. I was even speaking with ChatGPT and I kind of screen recorded as well. But yeah, because I also have a feeling that humans, like AI is gonna get so advanced, but then like certain humans who create these AIs, they're gonna start believing that the AI is more advanced than them, like than humans, and gonna start listening to the AI, thinking that the AI knows everything. But no matter how much the AI knows, it will never know anything because it also will have a limited, incomplete perception. So let's say, for example, I have an incomplete perception, but I see 50%, and then the AI has an incomplete perception, but I see 70%. Then whatever scheme it like constructs might last longer within this like the test of time than whatever I construct, whatever system I construct. But still, just because it lasts longer than mine doesn't mean that it's absolutely true. And eventually, whatever system it constructs will also backlash and crumble as well. See? So, like, something can only be like something can only last forever or have 100% integrity if it has 100% knowledge and has 100% data, which is impossible for any particular viewpoint to have, right? See, so that's the kind of issue that we're dealing with here. And see, so you can never really truly solve the problem, but the main thing that we have to do is just bring awareness to this. If everyone knew that no one knows, then we would start acting more sensibly. But as I explained prior, it's this current condition right now where people believe that someone else knows, and that person that they believe knows actually doesn't know. See, that's the problem. So they're walking off the cliff, and then everyone else is following them off the cliff. So, yeah, I'm gonna leave that one there. Let me know what you think.